Hey folks, Steve here with a 1918 Storm in the West video for you today. We are going to get the game started proper here and kickstart turn one. Now, in terms of the actual rhythm of this series, or the rest of this series, I've not yet determined how much content I can fit in a single video. When I've covered other games, sometimes I would cover a lot of gameplay in a video, really in depth, and it would be a really long video for like each turn. Other times, especially with World in Flames there towards the end before I quit, I was doing a lot of stuff off camera. It's kind of hard to figure out how I want to do this because I know a lot of folks are really interested in the zoomed in, what am I doing, why am I doing it, commentary that tends to make things a lot longer. So we'll feel it out, guys, obviously, depending on what the title is. And my camera's screwing up again. Anyway, wherever the disruption occurred with the video, just the clip a second ago. But basically, I'm going to try to fit as much commentary and gameplay into about an hour's worth of video. If that ends up being a turn, then we'll have 16 videos, one for each turn. If I'm able to go much faster, or the game is just kind of moving at a faster clip, and I'm not talking as much commentary as we go, then maybe I can fit in more. It's just going to depend on how things are going and how interested people are in the deep detail. So let me know in the comments section as we go. We'll see how this runs, and if you guys are really interested in me slowing things down. So yeah, camera's still screwing up a lot lately. I think it's the memory card that I'm using. So maybe I should buy a new one at some point. I don't know. But yeah, okay. So there we go, guys. That's a quick comment there. We'll try to get through turn one. I'm doing a lot of preamble. That's a bummer. We'll get into this turn and we'll see how far we get. If I can get into turn two in this video, great. But we're potentially looking at 16 videos, followed by sort of post-mortem thoughts, and then I'll eventually do a review for this game as well. So if you're interested in all of that is to come. I did have the previous video, which was an introduction, strategy discussion, and setup commentary, so you can go watch that. That's kind of an hour-long video. But if you like the channel already, we're going to get in depth here as we get going. This not being a huge game, might not be too crazy. Real quick before we get started, I do want to point out that basically the offensive operations for the Germans in this first turn are going to run from up here to about here, because from here onward, everything down along the rest of the German line are all of my weaker trench units that are 143 in combat value for the most part. So they're really not intended to, really not intended to be a force that will. In fact, I'm looking at something. I think I'm going to change. I'm going to change my setup just ever so slightly. There we go. They're so weak on attack. They have okay defense, but we're going to hold them stationary, and then everywhere else we're going to see where we can get to. And I have to get myself in the mindset that, there's no activity limits. Every unit can do stuff if I want them to. So just because I'm active up here doesn't mean I'm not active down here. I can be active in many places, because it's just I go, you go. You can move all your stuff, act with your full force. So the turn begins, this scenario begins with the German player. So we can run through a lot of the initial steps very quickly. I'm going to look at the extended turn sequence on the back of the rule book, and you can kind of see this. I'm not going to hold it in front of the camera the whole time, but we're going to walk through it. So the Germans always go first, so the very first thing we do is an initial supply phase. Within that, we determine weather. Well, on turn one, the weather can only be dry, so that's easy. Is there any Allied strategic bombing? Well, that's only for the 1919 scenario, so nothing to do there. And then the German supply determination. So all this in the German player turn of turn one. The German player determines whether his units are in supply or out of supply. Well, as it happens, at the beginning of the game, everybody is in supply. Sorry, I bumped the camera. Everybody's in supply, right? I mean, we didn't set up in a position where guys would be out of supply. Then we get to the replacement phase. So the German player uses available replacements. Well, the Germans start with, over here on the track you can see, with 24 replacement points. That in the 24 box is the German replacements. The 1918 replacement chart on the player aid tells you how many new replacements get added to your total, but there isn't one for turn 1. You just start with a whole bunch. So we have 24. Do we want to use any? Well, every unit on the map on turn 1 is full strength, so there's nothing to do there. Next is strategic movement, so phase C. The German player may move 4 units by strategic movement. Well, as it happens, barring me kind of shuffling a couple of units here, sort of finalizing my setup, there's really no strategic movement for me to make. I have set up, everyone's sort of set up to the best of their ability, and that's as good as it can get. So at least this turn, no strategic movement. I could see a case where the Allies might have some strategic movement after the Germans go, but we'll get to that. Finally, we have phase, or not finally, but next we have phase D, regular movement. So the German player conducts regular movement. Well, again, we've got all our units stuck up here in the front lines. They're about where I intended them to be for setup purposes, or as best as I could kind of figure out what else to do there. So there's, again, not a whole lot, I think, for me to do. So no regular movement. And then the rest of the German turn here, we have our combat. So we decide where we want to conduct combat against adjacent allied units. The way that this game works, sort of like other Ted Racer hex encounter games, or really a lot of hex encounter games, not just Ted Racer games. We don't have to declare all of our combats. We can fight a combat. If that went well, then decide to fight another combat adjacent or nearby. We can do it in any order we want, just as long as units are only attacking once in this. And then when we say we're done with the combat phase, then we have infiltration movement, where our assault shock trooper units will get to move 1 hex if they're able to move 1 hex and there's not an enemy there. And then we have a second combat phase. And during the second combat phase, it doesn't matter whether or not the units involved in those combats are infiltration capable. In fact, what it could mean is I have guys over here who are not assault units attack, and then they could attack again if they wanted to. We may not want to do that because they might be banged up and it might not be worth it, but we'll consider that. And then after that second combat phase, we will eliminate German units marked out of supply in the initial supply phase that are still out of supply. Well, that's not really going to be relevant here. So all we really need to worry about in this first go as the Germans is basically first combat, infiltration movement as capable, and then second combat phase where we want to have it. And that's really it. So it's kind of there's not a whole lot for us to do, but there's a obvious place for us to focus on. Now, there are a bunch of special considerations that we need to keep in mind. So on this very first turn, German Stoss Truppen, the Stormtrooper, the assault units, get a +2 to their combat, whatever combats they're involved in. So as long as there's one involved, it'll get a +2. That's going to be really important, and why I kind of spread out the assault units a little bit, just so I can have as many combats on this first turn with a +2 as possible, so that we're able to inflict enough hits to really be a problem. And let's see, what else? There is basically a special rule when it comes to the Allied trenches, where as long as there are shock troopers involved, the Allied trench only provide a -1, and that is cumulative with the extra bonus of the first turn. So really, any attack on the main Allied line here on the trenches, the Germans are at least going to get +2 if there's a Stormtrooper attack, Stoss Truppen attack, then a -1 because of instead of a -2 on an Allied trench. So it's really like that kind of nets out to be a +1, because all these combats are going to be in trenches, right? Every hex that we have potential combat, at least until we get to the second combat phase, will be a net +1 from that perspective. But then there's still other factors, right? If there are towns or cities, that's another modifier to the die roll. If we have the German artillery group involved, that's going to be another +1. Air could minus or +1 something. If there's any concentric attacks, which probably in the first combat we won't see any. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is just going to come down to figuring out did I pick the right places to attack. There's one other thing that we need to keep in mind, and that's due to an optional rule that we have. So with the Stoss troop and attacks, I'm playing with Stoss troop and attack casualties, so whenever we have them involved in combat, we must absorb at least one of our loss points from those involved Stoss trooping. So over time, these guys are going to take hits until we can give them replacements. And then there are some weak trenches. So the 3 southernmost hexes of the initial British sector had only recently been taken over by them from the French. It's in poor repair, blah, 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 blah. Therefore, Stoss-led German attacks into those hexes suffer no Allied trench DRM, and non-Stoss-led suffer only a -1 instead of a -2. So basically, these 3 hexes here, which happen to be right nearby Big Bertha. And I guess in some ways that kind of lines up with where the historical Operation Michael managed to have a breakthrough kind of occur. And again, the Germans kind of came through, and then Georgette sort of tried to go up north, and then, I don't know, they just sort of lost track of their momentum at some juncture along the way historically. So, okay, so what do I need to do? Well, you guys are watching me sort of meander around. I need to decide where I'm going to have combats and conduct those combats as we go. Again, I'm probably going to start looking like, okay, clearly it's going to be like I might do some combats down here, all along through here, and then we're probably going to look our way up the line and just figure out where there's going to be combats. At the very least, there's going to be combats up here. Definitely going to be combats up here. I have sort of elected this to be a focus area for the campaign, and I'm certainly thinking about the knockout blow to knock out all of those sort of channel port areas for the automatic victory. I think it's feasible. We should try it. It'll at least be interesting to see how bad it gets if I totally royally screw it up. And then in terms of like how do we want to plan the rest of this out? So looking at the replacement chart, I mean, I have 24 replacements. I'm going to get a total of 2, 4, 7, 12, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay, so 49 replacement points across 16 turns. I mean, we really can't... like what's going to happen is the Germans are going to really get ground down, and we don't want to lose, I guess, more than like 2 steps a turn if we can help it, so that we stay in good order. But the reality is we're just going to get chopped up, I think, no matter what we do. There's no way to have a slow degradation of the Germans. So when we look at that, I'd say the only way to stay in good order is to not take more than 2 step losses per turn. That's just not going to happen, right? So the Allies, by comparison, probably come out a little bit better in terms of the replacements, thanks to the American involvement. So it really is a huge bet. Like we say, okay, we're going to go for this up here. If we attain it, then we win the game, and then the Germans win. And that's just, we win an early victory, and we don't play the whole way through the game. It might be worth trying, because in the late game, I mean, the Germans just aren't going to be able to hold up well anyway, even if the Allies have kind of a tall order to meet to succeed. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a tough call. And then, of course, as soon as we're done with all this German stuff, I've got to do the Allied stuff and do their counterattacks, if any, or shuffling of the line. So I'm going to take a quick break for a second. For you, it'll be a blip, and we'll actually get some attacks underway and figure out where we're gonna go. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, so let's start down here in the south, just because it's probably less intense, and we can work our way up in terms of intensity of the combats, right? So let's say right here on this hinge at the tip of my finger is where we have some operational offensive capability against the French. Again, everywhere southeast of those units, it's all a bunch of weak guys, in some places gaps in the hexes, because the action, is all going to be in the northeast. So let's just figure out if it's worth attacking. And I'll say that right now, the Germans and the British are the guys with air units. I believe that the British could send their air to support the French. I have to double check the rule, but I think both sides of my brain, both the German and the Allied side, are going to consider the Channel port sector, we'll call it, is going to be a critical point or a critical place for air stuff. So we're not even going to worry about the air. And what's interesting is that those air units are very much like the sort of bonus assets that you might see in other Ted Racer games like the Dark Valley and stuff, right? Where they can add a little bit, and in this game they essentially serve as die roll modifiers instead of combat factor bonuses. But still, there's not a whole lot of them, right? So a lot of the combat, for the most part, besides the little bit of air interaction, is going to be based very much on combat factors and terrain, and how many hexes you have against the hex you're looking to attack. And it's going to be that simple. So this game is not going to be terribly complicated from that perspective. So let's see what we want to do here. Let's just look right here. I'm going to get out my tweezers, and we'll see. So this is Verdun. Oh, golly. Well, let's figure out exactly what this would look like. I don't think I'm going to attack Verdun. It'll probably be a poor idea, though it'd be a great pickup for morale purposes. We have 5 factors here. We have 5 factors here. 10 factors attacking 5 factors. And if I look, so ordinarily, the 5 defensive factors of the French, that would be 2-to-1 odds. But let's see. What is the combat effect of a fortress? It's going to be a German casualties +2, just straight up +2. So we would see these units become reduced even if we took the hex. And let's see, so that'd be 2-to-1 odds. Are there any bonuses that we would get here? It doesn't look like there would be any bonuses. Trenches and forts don't, I believe, do not help each other. I think they're treated distinctly from one another, actually, to be clear. So I just want to double check that. I'm reasonably confident that that's the case. Yeah, okay. It says in the rulebook, page 16, that they are mutually exclusive. So the only effect of attacking Verdun is going to be the casualties +2. But I guess the other thing that I have to look at is, does Verdun count as a city? or a town. So it's a good thing I'm looking this stuff up. Oop. I just kicked my camera. Okay. Differentiating between a city and a town is kind of difficult. I believe because it is this is a town. I believe that's a town. So it's a town in a fort, which leads me to believe that these are combined. Let me double check the rules on this. Okay, so yes, the town modifier does affect in addition to the fort. So let's just, and if we don't roll it, we should just think through it, right? So it's 10 to 5, that's 2 to 1 odds. We're going to have a -1 because of the town that is a part of the fort. And then the fort itself is going to just straight up, because it's a French fort occupied by French units, would give German casualties a +2. If I look at the actual die roll chart, our results are either going to be a 1 or, I guess, at most a 5. If we rolled, we would have to roll a 6 on the die, -1 to 5, to clear the hex and cause 2 step losses. One of those step losses could be a retreat, though. But it would basically, almost anything that we roll will completely eliminate these German units. So we're not going to attack Verdun. That much, it seems to be the thing to do here. Yeah, we would. I mean, what even the ideal situation, even in the most ideal situation, we would still likely lose both German units. The French would be pushed out of the fort, but the Germans wouldn't get it. So right now, unless we brought more units to bear against Verdun, Verdun's going to hold. So we're not even going to attack. We're not even going to bother doing that. So let's look elsewhere. Let's look at this colonial unit here. So there's some river action here. We might not want to deal with that. It is a forest and the Allied trench. So what would that combat look like? Well, we would have the assault unit and infantry. So that's 11 to 5. That's still 2 to 1. That's still 2 to 1. And let's see. It is an Allied trench, but it would just be a -1. Okay, so this is the case where okay, interesting. Okay, so the forest is a -1. The Allied trench would be -2, but because there's it would be a Stoss-led attack, it would be -1, and then +2 from the first combat of the game with the Stoss troops. So it would be straight 0. And then the 2 to 1 chart it does not look great. 2 to 1 does not look great. 1 to 6, the best we could hope for is to eliminate the unit but be pretty banged up. Otherwise, it's very likely we would have very banged up units. I don't like the thought of that. Even if we were able to make some sort of breakthrough there, I think what bothers me is the forest makes it hard. So maybe we don't attack there. We would have the same problem here. Here would be better. So we would have 12 to 5, that's 2 to 1, right? I'll shift the camera a little bit so we stay with it. So it would be 2 to 1, -1 for the Allied trench with a Stoss-led attack, but a +2. So that would leave us with a +1. It would still be 2 to 1 odds, but a +1 would give us either a 2 to 7, which is certainly better, but it is still quite rough. And we've got those French cavalry back here sort of screening Chalons, but all of that is just it, man. I mean, this is such a tough thing. Like, where can you go? Same thing here. These guys going across a minor river would be a little bit worse. This isn't even going to happen because it's 1 to 1. All right, so for fun, sure, let's try here, because if we take the hex, we're at least protected by the river a little bit. Let's see, would that work? Yeah, well, we can try it. So what do we got? We would have, getting back to it, it would be a net +1 of the die roll on a 2 to 1 chart. So let's see what happens here. We rolled a 6. 5 + 1 is 6. So 2 to 1, 6, 2 losses and 2 losses. So the defender can still take a step loss by retreating. So let's say they do that, that they take a step loss, they take their second step loss by retreating. The Germans have to take 2 step losses. And let's say they do it like so. And do they advance after combat into a kill box? I don't think they want to do that. I think that's actually not a good idea. This was maybe not a good attack. Yeah, maybe that was a foolish attack. I mean, we bounced these guys off. But I guess if the French counterattacked, they'd have 8, 11, 12. I don't know. Let's say they advance. Let's say they advance like that. I don't know if that's a really good move, to be honest, but or maybe. Well, yeah, I don't know. Let's just do that. Let's just see how well that goes. All right, so let's look elsewhere up the chain, right? We kind of have a feel for what's too much or what's not enough. Probably not going to make any headway in res. I looked up how to pronounce REIMS, and it was a very interesting video. You need to pronounce the R as a French R, which means you're saying the R sound from the back of your throat, not with your lips. So instead of saying like red, where I'm using my lips, you say red, like not. You don't roll the R. Red, like it's in the back of your throat. Red, res. And the M is silent, so it's like R-E-S with the back of your throat R. Red. Something like that. I can't speak French, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that one. But we're not going to be attacking res, whatever. We're not going to do it, because that's just bad news, I think. Now the other thing is we have the 3 hexes against these 2 French units on a hill, or rather rough terrain, and the fort. In that case, we would have 16 to 10, which I'm reasonably confident is not 2-to-1 odds, right? That's like one. That's going to reduce down to 1-to-1 odds, I think. Camera screwed up. So let's shift the camera again, and we'll focus here. So this colonial French unit being attacked. So 16 to 5. That is 3-to-1. With a +1, all things considered. I think that's pretty good. I think that's worth it. So 3-to-1 +1. Let's see what we get. I rolled a 2. +1 is 3. So 3 on 3-to-1 is 1 step loss for the French and 2 for the Germans, which, that's not great. So not as good as I might have been hoping for. Let's see, what else do we have? We have an attack that we could perform here. And this is one of those weaker fort hexes that we looked at earlier. In fact, it's the last one that we can really take advantage of. Okay, so here we would have that's 17 to 4. That's actually 4-to-1 odds. The trench has no impact at all because it's one of the weak trenches with Stoss troop and attacking into it. But the river does give us a -1. But we do have a +2. So it ends up being a +1 on the 4-to-1 table, which is, I think, the best that we've gotten this whole time. And I rolled a 5, +1 is 6. So 6 on 4-to-1 completely eliminates this unit. There's no way to avoid that. So that goes into the dead pile. The Germans take 2 losses. And then I can advance after combat. Yeah, I think we'll do that. So here's my thinking. We took some losses. Big Bertha's there. Like, that kind of feels dangerous a little bit. But what we are going to be able to do is do an advance after combat and be in the desolation a little bit, but that's going to sort of have broken the line somewhere. So I'm hoping that's something decent we can try. Okay, we're going to keep going up. We could have a 3-to-1 attack here, so 15 to 5, 3-to-1. But there's no Stoss troop in, so we would have a -2 and then a -1 for the devastated, so it would be -3. Ugh. Yeah, I don't think we want to do that. That's not good. That would be very poor. So I don't think we attack there. We could try here. So I'll move the camera again. So I'm thinking we could try, well, actually, try here. Or here, I guess. Yeah, we could try here. So that would be 11, only 11 to 4. That's only 2-to-1 odds, basically. And it'd be a straight up die roll, I believe, because we would have the +2, -1 for the Allied trench, and the -1 for the devastating. So it'd be a straight up die roll there. It's not great. Yeah, I mean, it's not great. I'm not sure how I feel about it. We'd be really close to Arras, and then we could even seize it potentially in infiltration movement. So, yeah, I don't know. We can try it. I rolled a 1. Yeah, no good. That's not good. Not one bit. So, that's no good. We actually lose a German unit. 3 losses. That's a bummer. Okay, so the rest of these combats up north are going to be highly intensive for whether or not we want to do air. And it's going to be a pretty simple thing to kind of figure out what we want to do. There's Vimy Ridge. That's got 11. 16 to 11 wouldn't get us very far. Okay. I think what we do is 11, 22 to 4. 22 to 4, yeah, that's 5 to 1 with a +1. Yeah, we're gonna attack up here. Ugh, I rolled a 1 +2. Oh, this is where the game was warning us. The higher your odds, the greater chance that you're gonna have casualties. And no kidding, I rolled a 1 +1 is 2. We take 2 losses, so we'll take 1 and retreat. But then we've got to take 4 losses as the Germans, and 1, 2. Well, see, maybe what I do is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's not good. Or I guess I have to have taken a step loss, and so one of these guys would be, let's see, 1. Yeah. Well, that's no good. That's no good at all. Dang. Yeah, I don't know what's the right odds to be attacking with. To be honest, that was really rough. Now we've got up here, so 11 defending. We would have 11, 21. If I used the artillery, it would be 36. This would probably be the one where the air gets used, so we'll just have both sides use their air for this big battle right here. So it ends up being altogether 36 to 11, which is going to be 3 to 1 odds. We get +1 for AGB. We're going to get +2 for the Stoss attack. So that's a +3. We're going to have -1 for the Allied trench, so +2, and then it is rough, so -1. So it's a +1 on the 3 to 1 table. And I rolled a 5 +1 is 6. So we do 3 So we'll lose 1, 1, 2. Yeah, we don't want to lose the Australian unit, so we'll retreat, lose 2. The Germans have to lose 2. Lose 1 there, and lose 1 there. We'll advance after combat. So, yeah, we took 1 hex. That's all right. Big fight there. Now the other options we have left are, let's see, 5, 10, 16 to 8. 16 to 8. Oh, and that's a marsh. And that would be, yeah, 2 to 1 with no die roll modifier. Because of the marsh and the Stoss troop in and all that. I mean, I guess we try. I rolled a 4, 1, and 1. So we'll take a hit off the Portuguese, and the Germans will take a hit here. And I don't think there's anything that the Germans can really do against those Belgians up there. The Belgians are double stacked, 10 factors each, and we can't get any better than 1 to 1 odds. So I guess that's all we could get. Did I advance after combat over here? I think I screwed up somewhere a little bit. See, if the Germans did take this hex, then they would have come up, I guess. But I'm not sure that's what happened. I'm going to have to double check this footage. And that's kind of the end of all the attacks. So what gains have I made? Well, in a couple of places, I've pushed the French back a little tiny bit. I've lost some German units. I've pushed into the Allied trenches a little tiny bit, but that is awfully rough. It's pretty gnarly. That was a pretty gnarly set of stuff going on. So I'm going to pause here and review the footage a little bit just to make sure I did that move right, and then we'll end up doing some infiltration move and figure things out from there. Okay, so with the first combat phase over, we now lose some of our bonus for the Stoss troop and attacks, which is a bummer because it only the +2 only applied if it was the very first combat phase. Now that we'll eventually have our second combat phase as the Germans, but the Stoss troop will only have a +1. Still appreciate the +1; that helps a lot. And that sort of is the only way we can deal with the Allied trenches. But be that as it may, we are going to have to do our infiltration movement next. So infiltration movement can only be done by infiltration-capable units, which I believe is really only the Stoss troop and only the Stoss troop can do that. Now, I left that guy out just to kind of see what happens, but he can't go anywhere. So what else can be done here? Where else can the Stoss troop go? Well, there's a couple of places. We can move this guy 1 hex this way. Whether or not that's a good idea, I don't know. But let's just do it. Let's just figure it out. Boom. We broke the Allied line, and these guys have raced further into the devastation. Amiens is several hexes away. It would probably be pretty hard to get to it, but it's a conceivable thing, so that's nice. Where else? Well, we got some gaps in the line, rough situation. The only other place we can really do such movement would be here, and we could go 1 hex like that. Now, the reason why we are going to do that is because when we have our second combat phase, we now have a concentric attack against those guys. So we've created a break in the line, and we have an opportunity to sort of smash our way again. Where it's like we're a line right here from this hex to that hex. We're busting open the line. We want to kind of get up through here, a more localized exploit, and basically create some havoc where these British units down south can't even trace supply. I mean, that would be wonderful if we put them into that. They're only tracing supply to French supply hexes. Then they're going to be, halved in effectiveness. If we just beat up on the British, we might not have to worry so much. If we keep our losses in the British sector, we can spend most of our replacements against the British, and locally, our replacements versus the British replacements is as good or better. So we could potentially, kind of, maybe this is where we have the ability to come out ahead. So that's all the infiltration movement that we can make. And now we get into the second combat phase. So, where do we want to attack next for what it matters? What can be done of value here, I guess, is the real question. Well, let's start down on the south again, and let's see. Do we want to attack here? Well, it would be, let's see, 3-1 odds. The trench would be basically negated by the Stoss-led attack, but we would have a -1 coming across the river. So that would just be a straight 3-1 odd roll. Would that be enough? Well, the problem is almost anything we roll would likely mean we lose a unit. So that doesn't seem like the best idea. So let's just back out of that and say that we tried to make something happen, we didn't do as well. Over here, it's probably a little bit better because we could try to attack here again. And then in this case, we would have 14-4. That's 3-1 odds. And yeah, 3-1 odds. So we could try here. I think it's worth a shot. So 3-1, flat die roll because the Stoss Truppen bonus is negated by the Allied trench, and that is clear terrain. So we'll try 3-1. I rolled a 5, which is good. 2-2. So this unit is eliminated because even if we retreated one, the one other step loss would take it out. We take a step loss here, and then we have to take another step loss. What do we lose is really the problem. We could lose this guy and advance this guy like that. That's maybe the best thing that we can do, so that we still have some Zoc locking, but now, we've got something of a breakthrough a little bit. But the line's so thin here; that's such a problem. I'm not sure what to think about that. Okay, so let's look up further. Further up the line. So we have an attack that could happen here that we could exploit. So there's 5, 10, 20, 20-4, 5-1 odds, +1, so that would be negated. And let's see, does the river matter if we have units coming across otherwise? Okay, so there's no river bonus or penalty because we have units attacking this guy through these hex sides, which is not river. But I do have the devastation. So the devastation is -1, but we have 5-1 with a -1. I think that's it. Yeah. Let's see. I rolled a 5, it is a 4, so that's 3-3. So even if he retreats, he's eliminated. And we have to take 3 step losses. So 1, 2, and then what I'll do, I guess, is, Oh man, that's tough because we just don't have a whole lot of Zocs covering the zone is the problem. 3, I guess. Oh, yeah, that's just rough. And if we advanced after combat, I mean, it's not that great. Like, that this is bloody. I don't know if it's a value that we did what we just did, but I mean, we're beyond the Allied trench line, I guess. That's sort of the important thing. We're stuck in the devastated terrain. And Big Bertha is in a little bit of danger there, but I mean, it's worth a shot, I guess. Everywhere across the line, I'm not sure it makes sense to attack anywhere, but we'll look. Fighting with the thing here. So, I mean, we could try attacks. See, that's still in the trench line. I mean, probably the only attacks I feel are really worth trying are going to be, let's see, here, and we would have 10, 19, 23 to 4, is that right? 23 to 4, 5 to 1. 5 to 1 with a +1 due to the concentric attack. And come to think of it, I think I had a concentric attack over here. So that actually, I think maybe I needed to have a step loss back. So maybe one of these guys is supposed to be back down here in the south. I think I screwed that up. There was a concentric attack. We should have gotten a bonus for that. Not a big deal. But I realize this video is going to keep getting longer and longer and longer. Okay. So if we're attacking here, that's a concentric attack for sure. And 5 to 1, +1. The Stoss troop negates the trench. And we get a +1 because of the concentric attack. So 5 to 1 +1. Ugh, I got a 2. So that's pretty bloody. This unit is definitely destroyed. Well, I guess he takes a step loss, and he could potentially retreat. Yeah, so he retreats, but then we have to take 4 step losses as the Germans, so it's like 1, 2, 3. That's nasty. That's not good. I gotta stop for a second to make sure I'm counting right. Okay, I think this is the result. I had a full strength unit that I removed, and then I lost 2 reduced strength units. And so, like, this whole Vimy Ridge, like, okay, we forced the Allies back, but they just, I mean, talk about untenable position. I mean, just nasty. And there's a huge hole in the line right now, and I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. And it kind of makes me think, like, okay, is there any point in doing any more attacks? You know, there's like one more we could try. It would be for Ypres. So 15 to 5. It'd be a town. This would be a -1. 3 to 1, -1. I'm not sure that's worth it. But maybe we try it. I'm just not sure if there's anything else that I can do to help. Ah, well, shoot. Okay. Okay. So with this attack, actually, we ought to be able to use our artillery again, apparently. We're allowed to do that. So it would be 15, 30 to 5, 6 to 1, and it would be a flat die roll, 6 to 1. This could be really bloody. I rolled a 6, so 2 to 3, so these guys are eliminated. And then you take 2 step losses, so we take one off. We take one off here, we take it, and we take Eep. And so we're going to go ahead and change the morale situation. The Germans go up by 2, the Allies go down by 2 to 13. Now the Germans still have to take another place within the next few turns, but that is at least enough. They made some progress. The only thing is they've got to take a lot more if they want to make a whole lot of progress. Double checking to see if they got any other morale places. They didn't. So they are up now 2 by taking Eep. But gosh, they're paying for it, and I suspect, or I'm worried, that the Germans are going to pay dearly for all of that. Now that combat's over. I'm not going to do any other combats. That was rough as it was. We do get to the terminal supply phase. We do have Big Bertha that fires on Paris. So we'll just very quickly figure out if anything happens there. So rolling 2 dice, I need to roll 2 6s, I think, for this to matter. So unlikely, but conceivable, to sap off some of the Allied morale. And that is not a 12. So Paris gun doesn't do anything. I mean, it shells, but it doesn't do much. All right, that's the end of the German player turn. What do I think so far? My gosh. I might lose the game right now. I feel like I lost so many units as the Germans that I just have no idea whether they can keep the dream alive, to be honest. I think there's a whole lot that they are going to have to deal with. There's no easy way to resolve the problems that they've got. I mean, I've lost so many steps. I mean, I knocked some stuff loose, but what it took to do that, and the fact that the defender always has an opportunity to retreat, sort of out, is pretty gnarly. So, it is very difficult for me to figure out. Like, I mean, I realize this is World War I. This is the way it's supposed to go, but man, just gnarly. And we don't get to spend our replacements as the Germans until after the Allies go. So the Allies have the potential here to maybe do some counterattacks and really wallop the Germans. I mean, it's entirely possible that's what occurs. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to go. And the thing is, you have to keep in mind, they could be counterattacking the units that stuck their nose out. So these German units that are furthest ahead are out of the German trenches. They don't have a lot of protection, and they could cause a lot of problems. So, yeah, I don't know what to think about that. I have to figure out what is even feasible right now. The only saving grace the Germans maybe have here is that the Allies can't ooze through Zocs. So while there are some holes in the line, there are enough Zocs that the Allies can't just move in and wreak havoc. They are kind of rebuffed a little bit. But yeah, that's rough. But the Allies do have their tanks in reserve, and that they can now link up with a stack and provide a lot of firepower. And I don't think there's anything keeping the Allies from doing that, even on turn 1. So yeah, I'm going to pause here, and then I'm going to sort of reorient my brain to the Allied side of my head that has to play as the Allies, and we'll look at the Allied player turn. Okay, so starting the Allied player turn, we're going to do the initial supply phase, and as it turns out, we actually have some out-of-supply units. And it is, I realized I maybe did this, and not even intentionally, but because of Zocs projected into this hex and this hex, this unit is this stack is out of supply, which is good for the Axis, or the Central Powers Germany. Okay. So that's the initial supply. I think everybody else is in supply. The supply lines in this game are very lenient. Basically, as long as you don't have a Zoc issue, and you can trace back to a supply point, you're fine. So basically, even for the British, no matter how hairy things get down here, as long as a British unit can count and even along the coast up to the channel ports, they're fine. So it's going to take a lot to really deprive. Like, there's not going to be huge out of supply problems for anybody, really, unless you see some huge crazy encirclement, but that's unlikely. What you're more likely to get, I think, in this game are the localized out of supply. So that case up there where they're sort of stuck. And I think the way the Zoc movement rules work is, these guys aren't going to be able to get out unless they're really fortunate or something, something occurs in terms of combat. So we'll see how this works. But yeah, everyone else should be fine in terms of supply. And so then we get into the replacement and reinforcement phase. On turn 1, the Allies don't get any reinforcement, so there's not much to really look at there. But let's see, we do have replacements. So we don't get any new ones. The Belgians haven't taken any losses, so they don't have any replacements to really spend. Oh, I did take a loss on the Portuguese. They're not going to be able to get replacements. And we avoided the Australian or the Canadians being eliminated, so that's not so bad. We just have some British. We have 4 British units in the dead pile and 1 French unit, 1 French colonial unit, I should say, and a whole bunch of Germans. Okay. We can replenish in supply units. Units replenished can be in enemy zones of control as long as they're in supply. There's no combat or movement penalty for being refreshed. And let's see. Okay. So, what do the French want to do? Well, here's the funny thing about the replacements. Like, if there's no penalty, the French can boost their guys back up and then counterattack before the Germans have had a chance to replenish as well. So I think there's a huge strategic disadvantage for the Central Powers in this game for Germany. So let's just play it out. We're going to spend 1 French replacement to flip this guy to full strength. Boom, done. The French can also spend, I don't think there's any issue with doing this. They're going to spend 2 more, 1, 2, to put the French colonial unit back into the game. And let's see, what do we want to do with him? For now, I'm just going to set him in Paris, but that's not where he's going to go. We're going to strategically move him into the port. Because French reinforcements can come onto the map via any operating French regular supply source hex, which is basically the west and south map edges. Or they can operate, or they can basically be railed somewhere. And we might do that with this unit. So we're just going to put them there as a holding box thing. I'm not going to get too crazy about it. Then we have the British. So can we replenish units already on the map? Well, we can. We could do... let's see. Things are already foobar down here. We could spend 1 here. Belthune. We can't replenish Portugal, so that's 1 spent. And then if we were going to replenish these other British units, that would cost us 8 more. So let's just say we get them out. It's better to get them out early, I suspect. And let's get them into these channel ports. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, and we'll put the 4th one here. So there we go. The British have spent out their replacement points basically. I guess in terms of like proximity, this is good for the Germans because they knocked enough units out with the combats that to bring them back onto the board, they've got to end up over here. And yeah, I mean that's as close to the front as they can get, and they took enough losses in one go that they've spent out their replacements. So there really will be a point where the British just don't have a lot of resource points or replacement points left now. I mean, they're going to get a little bit every turn, but they've taken a lot of hits. That's going to be tough for them to deal with. They're already on a back foot, one might say. Okay, so replacements and reinforcements are done. Strategic movement. Allied player may move 6 units by strategic movement. Now, the only thing with strategic movement here is that, let's see. Okay, any strategic movement has to end in town or city hexes. So the Allies get 6 units they can do this with, so I'll do 1 unit. We'll have it be this unit, and we'll move them into Soissons here. Just so there's some French reinforcements in that zone. I don't know that there's any other, I really don't know that there's any other strategic movement that they can do that would make sense here. Then I think what we need to do is, let's see, if they have to end, see, some of this is tough. This is what we'll do. We will take one of our reinforcing British units and we will rail them to Amiens just to help screen the coast a little bit because there's the potential for this breakthrough. We will send this one from Calais to Hasbrook. Again, the point is to get Zox in the way of the Germans. And then I actually think we could get away with sending this one to Hasbrook as well. And I think that should help cover the line just fine. And then, gosh, I mean, I think this last unit in the channel port can stay there. He can move more locally to protect the ports if the Germans manage to get through again. I'm not sure that they will, but that's what they'll try to do. Okay, so we'll say that the strategic movement is done. Now we have regular movement. Now, this is going to be really important. The Allies do not have any infiltration movement at all until turn 9. So it doesn't matter for the tanks. Even though they're there, they cannot be used for infiltration movement yet at all until turn 9. So this movement phase for the Allies is the only movement they're going to get. Then they're going to have first combat and second combat, one right after the other. And there's going to be no solving that. If they can't save these out-of-supply guys way up here, after the end of both combats, those units are going to go away. They'll be eliminated. So there is sort of a incentive right now for the Allies to move into those spaces, which they should easily be able to do, and restore supply. I don't think there's any way they can avoid... I don't think there's any way they will be eliminated here. Restoring supply to those guys should be pretty easy. But they do have to make sure to do that, I guess. So that's pro and a con, I guess. So we're going to do Allied movement. I don't think it's going to be hugely crazy. I'm going to do it off camera just because this is taking a while to explain. But basically, it's just going to be moving guys, up a little bit, and then we'll look at combats. Okay, you can see the movement now complete. Nothing too crazy. Just again moving guys up. The British have kind of moved to contain the breaking of the line, so they're projecting enough Zocs around. Not all the units could move exactly as far as I might have wanted them to ordinarily, but they've got enough coverage there. The French tanks are looking to create a big problem for the Germans right there, enough that they can put Big Bertha in danger, and that really is going to be their goal. By comparison, up here in the north, you can see I've sort of moved in to help restore supply to these guys. They'll still operate as out of supply, even though technically we would have restored their supply line because it's after the supply check. It just means that they won't be automatically removed at the end of the turn, unless something royally gets messed up over here in combats and we lose those British units, that sort of thing. So the movement is all done. So whatever happens out of the Allied attacks is what will, I guess, be the state of the turn for turn one. So do we want to do any attacks? Well, much like the Germans, we should start on one end of the map and just work our way north. The air units are still used up. I mean, they are used for the whole turn, so we took care of that early. Everything else from here is just going to be pretty straightforward stuff. So we're going to go all the way down here. So no attacks there. They could try to attack this unit, but here's the thing. He's in mountains and a trench. So mountain is -2. German trench is -2, so -4. 2 to 1, -4. No good. No good. So not going to attack here. 2 to 1, -2. No, probably not going to attack here. Likewise, I don't think there's any reason for us to try here yet. This one maybe. So we've got 3 to 1, -2. That actually might be worth it. So we're gonna try. And the reason why it wouldn't be a terrible idea to blast open a hole where we put Mets at risk. So 3 to 1, -2, if only to put stress on the Germans' ability to replace units. I rolled a 1. Alright, so that was bad. I rolled a 3, -2 is 1. So they take a step loss, and then these guys take 3 step losses. Alright, so that wasn't so good. That was a bad idea. Not that it's a huge risk for the French, because basically the Germans can't afford to counterattack down here, but that was worth a shot. The only other attack down here that makes sense is to maybe go for St. Mihiel. So we would have 16 to 6, which isn't great. It's not even 3 to 1 odds, so it'd be 2 to 1 odds. -1 for the forest, -2 for the German trench, so -3. It's also a town. Yeah, that's a nightmare. I don't think it makes sense to attack here. The defense is too strong. It just doesn't make sense. Everywhere else, I mean, likewise, there's just no point in trying, it seems like, except for where the Germans maybe have extended themselves too much. So here we would have 13 to 5, so again, 3 to 1 odds. 3 to 1 odds, and it would be -2. Or no, what would it be? I forget how this works. If this unit is in an Allied trench, what does that do? Does any side actually get the bonus for it? Okay, so yeah, that's not that actually. This is actually really bad news. The Allied trench doesn't provide any defensive bonus to the Germans. So what we would have here is 12, 13 to 5. That's 2-to-1 odds, but it's concentric attack, so a +1. And that is it. 2-to-1 odds, +1. That might be, well, is it worth it? For 1 unit. To knock out 1 unit. I mean, let's try it. All right, we got a 6 on 2-to-1. 2, that will eliminate the unit. And we have to take 2 step losses, which we'll just take off the French cavalry. And we'll advance and reclaim the trench. So, all things considered, Germans didn't make out well there. Not good. Down here, I think what they want to try to do is attack this hex. So they would have, and this unit is in an allied hex, which doesn't do anything for it. So 3, 7, 13, 14, 18, 18 to 5 is 3-to-1. And this is a straight die roll, so they're almost certainly going to eliminate the unit. 4, so we take 3, so 1, 2, 3, so there goes another cavalry. And the tank, this unit is eliminated, and the Allies take the hex back. So, I mean, at the cost of a French unit, but they're basically closing up the hole made here. This unit to this unit, probably not worth the try. Well, I don't know. 3 to 5, that's basically 1 to 2. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to be worth it. In most of these places, it's not going to be worth it. The Germans are still in their own trench line, so it looks like, just in terms of the rest of the attacks, I don't see any real obvious places where the Allies could make any headway, except for up here. So this is going to get into the, like, you know, are they going to hit back really hard? And where are they going to hit back really hard? So the obvious place seems to be they could attack here, they could attack here. I think what they could do is try to attack this guy. We would have 10, 13, 2-to-1 odds, and have a +1 of the die roll. And potentially cut that guy out of supply. I mean, that's not a bad deal. I don't mind that. So yeah, we'll try it. So yeah, with the tanks, yeah, 10, 13, 13 to 5, 2-to-1, +1 due to the tank. I think that's all we got. We rolled a 2. Well, all right. So what do we got? Roll the 1, +1 is 2. The Germans do lose a unit. But these guys, 1, 2, 3. And what? I mean, we're going to put this guy out of supply like that. Maybe it's better to do this. Yeah, that's probably the better way to do it. And then this guy will be out of supply coming soon. And then let's see, attacking here, we could have 6, 10, see, these guys would be out of supply. 14, it would be 2-to-1. Is that worth it? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we stop there. I think we hurt the Germans. We've blunted enough. We don't want to take any more losses because we're not going to be able to replenish as much. So I think, yeah, I think we're done there. That should be enough. And the Germans are, gosh, they've already lost. They've already lost enough units. It's like I don't know if they can even keep going. I think that the battles are already lost for the Germans already. I think the war's already over. I don't know. Okay, so I think we're good there. Now, are there any other attacks for the first round? No. So we're going to do second round of attacks. I'm going to just go ahead and skip ahead and say the next. This is the second round, second phase combat. If we go here, what do we have? We have 6, 10. It'd be 2 to 1 minus 2. I think that's worth it. We're going to roll it. So I ended up rolling a 2. So this guy's eliminated. They take 2 step losses. 1, 2. And we'll have these guys advance. So there's sort of a counter breakthrough with Bertha under threat. Let's see, where else? And I think we just go right back up here to these guys, where this unit's pretty much doomed. We do 3, 5, 7. We'd get 4 more from here due to the halving being out of supply. 11, so it'd be 2 to 1 odds with a +1 because of a concentric attack. This is kind of dangerous. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? This is the tough thing. 11. Ugh. If we roll poorly, I don't know if it's worth attacking just to take out that one unit. He's going to be out of supply and it's going to be a problem. Maybe we hold off. Because if I lose too many units down here, then it just becomes a problem. Too much of a problem for the Allies, and they're going to be too far behind. So maybe that's it. We attacked in one place. We've got some nice open field to start operating in. We've captured some German hexes. I mean, I think that's as good, maybe, as we get. So there you go. Okay, I think that is the end of that. And I guess the only other thing left to do is the terminus check for supply. So just want to double check that. So during this terminal supply check the supply status of all units marked as out of supply. If by that time they are not back in supply, remove them to the respective dead pile. What I'm wondering is, does that mean that these guys are now like that? Like we just take off the marker? Or do they stay out of supply, they're just not removed? Is what I'm wondering. I'm trying to look. I don't see a clarification here. So I'm guessing they must be good to go. So I'm going to remove this chit and say they're back in supply, because they are, and that's as much as we need to cover. Okay, well that's the end of turn 1, guys. So we will get into turn 2 in the next video, where the Allies get some American reinforcements. We check for some potentially wet weather, and somehow the Germans are going to need to figure out how to continue their drive. They've certainly pushed through the Allied trenches in a couple of spots, but the Allies have done the same, and Big Bertha may not be able to exist on the map for much longer. So it's kind of interesting. So far, the Germans have taken Ypres, which has put them up a few morale points. They still have plenty of turns to go until their next big thing, but they've lost so many units. I really don't know how they're going to deal with all of this to come. Very difficult to determine how they're going to keep the drive going. But this being the first play of the game, I just, there's probably a lot in terms of the tempo that I haven't figured out, or what is the right or best move in these given situations. I'm just really not sure the best moves to be making. I will say the combat results table is very bloody. It is very difficult to figure out, how you can do well without taking a ton of hits. And I'll say, any step losses is really rough. You almost want to keep it to 1 to 2 odds or 3 odds. Anything more than that, and it's just, you're going to lose whole units, right? If you're going to have an attack and you're going to lose 4 steps, you're talking about whole units being blown away. So, how... Yeah, boy, I don't know. It's just this first turn, such an important turn, sort of deciding where the focus of the game is going to be, which is like right here, and maybe around here, but, man, I just don't know. It's hard to imagine how this is going to go. And I think the one challenge is that the Germans, when they rebuild their units, are going to have a really hard time, I think, getting onto the board. I think that's the reality. And as I try to see... Yeah, boy. I think the real problem with the German situation, if I just want to put a capstone on this, is that they can come on the board on the east map edge, but then they're going to have to rail to the front to be of value. So if I look at what's in the German dead pile right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 units. And even if I bought up all of them and used up all of my replacement points to get these guys back, I could only get really 4 of them to the front, 4 of the 11 units, a little less than half to the front line in this next coming player turn. So it's going to be really tough, because you're really going to be picking where are we going to go? Where are we going to go next? Where are we going to take action and really commit to it? And I'm going to have a hard time making any more gains. I guess this is the reality of the Kaiserschlacht, I guess. Where are you going to be able to go? We have a destination in mind, but it's just difficult getting there. And when I look at the equation of the CRT, it's bloody, as you would expect, right? That's appropriate for World War I. The rail limitations of getting German units that are rebuilt to the front, it is just very difficult to figure out how we keep driving forward. Very difficult. And I think that's going to be the real challenge of what the Germans need to do, right? So it really is. They've got to focus on getting at least 1 more morale hex somewhere just to keep in the game. I think that might prove to be a challenge. and at the same time, I guess I could have focused elsewhere, right? I said, okay, let's do this. And I'm not sure it was a bad idea, but the die rolls were wishy-washy, either really good or really bad. If I had focused instead on saying, like, well, maybe we just take for done, and we focus on that, maybe that might have been better. Or focusing on res down here. I don't know. It's just really hard. That counterattack just was nasty. And I feel like as the allies, it didn't cost me much to pay into the counterattack. Like I felt pretty good about my counterattacks here. And it didn't seem like it was going to cost me too much because the Germans are going to be scrambling to try to get guys back in here. And I just don't think... they have a really tough decision, right? Do they rail their 4 units here, or do they rail them up here? I mean, that's basically the decision point that we're stuck in, and I don't have a good way to deal with that. Yeah, this is tough. I'm not sure what to think of this. I don't know if this was a typical first turn or if this was an abnormal first turn. Obviously, I went through things very slow just to kind of get, how to get going, but I don't know. Maybe I should not have attacked. Maybe I should have only attacked in certain places, but I just felt like that +2 bonus with the Stoss troop in on the first combat phase as the Germans was like, hey, let's get across the trenches wherever we can, but all that's really doing is putting a lot of pain and suffering back on the Germans. Because even if they get across the trenches, I mean, they're susceptible to some nasty counterattacks. So I could see a case where maybe what I should have done is focused more units in hexes and left more gaps. The rulebook kind of mentions stuff about that, but I didn't do it as much, and maybe that would have been better just to have more, like, free up some units to double stack up here. And then I might have just been able to absorb more hits and deal more damage in general. But I still think, when you look at the odds chart, like, okay, if you're going to pile a bunch of units together and go for the high odds, like, you're just asking to take a lot of hits anyway. So, I don't know, navigating all the numbers and the mechanics here and figuring out how do you advance is going to be the tricky bit. That is going to be the tricky bit for sure. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens here, guys. So, okay, that's turn 1. We're going to go into turn 2 in the next video. This is probably a very long video. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more in the series, hit subscribe. And we will catch you in the next one. Take care. Keep on gaming.